The conference room was packed that morning, phones out, fake smiles plastered on every face. I felt my stomach drop the moment Colin Mercer slid a report across the polished table, his eyes never leaving mine. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the faces of people I'd worked beside for 6 years. "Dean," Colin said, his voice dripping with honeyed sarcasm that made my skin crawl, "care to explain how you managed to lose us $500,000? My hand started shaking as I reached for the paper. The numbers staring back at me weren't mine. I knew it. Colin knew it. Everyone in that room knew it, but nobody would say a word. The interns whispered behind their laptops. The HR representative examined her nails like they were suddenly fascinating. My chest burned with humiliation as Colin leaned back in a chair, arms crossed, enjoying every second. "Pack your things," he said, loud enough for the entire floor to hear through the glass walls. "Security will walk you out." I opened my mouth to defend myself, but my voice cracked, breaking like glass. Laughter rippled across the room, quiet but unmistakable. That sound would haunt me for years. "My name is Dean Walters," and that was the moment the man I trusted most destroyed my life. The walk past my coworkers' desks felt like a funeral march. I tried to keep my breathing steady, but every eye followed me, some with pity, others with relief that it wasn't them. My desk sat near the back, where I'd spent countless nights finishing projects Colin took credit for. The family photo of Mara and our daughter Lily smiled up at me from the corner. I grabbed it with trembling hands, shoving it into my bag along with a coffee mug that had survived 5 years of daily use. Tyler from accounting wouldn't meet my eyes. Stephanie from marketing pretended to be on a phone call. These were people I'd helped, people who'd laughed at my jokes during lunch breaks. Now they scattered like I carried something contagious. The security guard appeared at my elbow, young and uncomfortable, probably doing this for the first time. "Sir, if you're ready," he said quietly. My badge beeped red when I tried to swipe it at the elevator. Deactivated already. They planned this perfectly, timed it so I couldn't even access my own files. When the elevator doors finally closed, cutting off the view of that poisonous office, I let out a sound I didn't recognize. A sharp, bitter laugh that belonged to someone else entirely. Someone broken. The apartment felt too quiet when I got home at 11 in the morning. Mara was at work, Lily at school. I sat at the kitchen table staring at nothing until my laptop pinged. The email from HR made everything worse. Subject line: voluntary resignation confirmation. I read it 3 times, each word cutting deeper. Colin had rewritten history completely. According to this official document, I'd resigned voluntarily due to personal performance concerns I'd acknowledged. Attached was a confidentiality agreement, dense with legal language that boiled down to one simple threat. Sign this and keep your mouth shut, or lose your severance and we'll destroy what's left of your reputation. My hands hovered over the keyboard. Every instinct screamed to fight back, to call a lawyer, to blast the truth across social media. But we had $1,700 in savings and a mortgage due in 3 weeks. Lily needed braces. The car was making that sound again. I clicked the signature box and typed my name, each letter feeling like a small death. Voluntary, the document said. I hadn't been given a choice about anything. Not the meeting, not the accusations, not even how my own career would end. I closed the laptop and sat in that silent apartment until the shadows grew long. Mara came home to find me still sitting there. She tried to hug me, but I felt her body go rigid with fear when I told her everything. "We'll figure it out," she kept saying, but her voice shook. That night, neither of us slept. We lay in the dark doing math in our heads, calculating how long we could survive. 2 months, maybe 3 if we cut everything. The bills stacked up like accusations on the kitchen counter. Insurance, mortgage, utilities, Lily's school expenses. Friends stopped calling within days. Not because they were cruel, but because failure was contagious in our industry. If Colin could destroy me this publicly, nobody wanted to be associated with my name. I started sending out resumes immediately, dozens of them, each one carefully worded to hide what had happened. But Colin's reach was longer than I'd imagined. He'd spent the week after firing me making phone calls, spreading his version of events. Dean messed up the numbers, he told anyone who'd listen. Wasn't fit for leadership. Had to let him go before he caused more damage. 2 weeks of silence from every application. Then 3. The rejection emails, when they came at all, were polite but final. Nobody wanted damaged goods. I drove to the firm 3 weeks later, desperate enough to beg for a reference, for anything that might help me find work. The security guard at the gate, someone I'd known for years, looked uncomfortable. "Sorry, Dean. You're not on the approved visitor list." I sat in my car in the parking lot, watching people come and go from the building where I'd given 6 years of my life. That's when Colin's new car pulled out, a silver BMW that probably cost more than my annual salary. He had the windows down, sunglasses on despite the overcast sky. He slowed when he saw me, and I hated the smile that spread across his face. "You should have been more careful with your spreadsheets, Dean," he called out cheerfully, like we were old friends catching up. Then he drove away, leaving me sitting there with rage burning so hot in my chest I thought I might explode. But I didn't explode. I didn't scream or chase him or do anything dramatic. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, understanding for the first time that some kinds of destruction are planned and deliberate, and the only way to fight back was to become just as patient, just as calculated. The car got repossessed on a Tuesday morning. The tow truck driver was apologetic, but that didn't stop him from hooking up our sedan while Lily watched from the living room window. She asked why the man was taking our car, and I couldn't find words that wouldn't terrify her more. Mara started working nights at a diner downtown, coming home smelling like grease and exhaustion. I took temp jobs when I could find them, filing papers, data entry, anything that would pay cash. We stopped going to church because I couldn't face the questions. We stopped answering the door because we owed money to everyone. I felt like a ghost in my own house, invisible and useless, watching my family struggle because I'd been stupid enough to trust Colin Mercer. Some nights I'd sit in Lily's doorway watching her sleep, thinking about the college fund we'd been building that was now gone. The birthday parties we have to skip. The life we promised her that was slipping away. Mara found me crying in the garage one night, surrounded by boxes of my old work files. She didn't say anything, just sat beside me on the cold concrete. That's when something inside me changed, hardened like cooling metal. Tears wouldn't fix this. Rage wouldn't fix this. Only a plan would. I bought a notebook at the dollar store and started writing late one night while Mara slept. Not angry rants or revenge fantasies, but cold calculations. I wrote Colin's name at the top of the first page and underlined it twice. Below that, I made a list of everything I knew about him. His patterns, his weaknesses, his ambitions. Where he lived, what he drove, who he networked with. I didn't know yet how I'd use this information, but I knew I needed it. On the last page, I wrote a single sentence in careful block letters. "One day, Colin Mercer will answer to me." I didn't know how. I didn't know when. But I knew with absolute certainty that this wasn't over. No shouting, no dramatic confrontations, no impulsive acts that would make me look crazy or dangerous. Just patience, careful planning, and the quiet determination of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to rebuild. I closed the notebook and tucked it into the bottom drawer of my desk. Tomorrow I'd start the long climb back. And Colin Mercer, sitting in his corner office thinking he destroyed me permanently, would never see me coming. The contract accounting jobs were brutal. 10-hour days processing expense reports and tax forms for small businesses that couldn't afford full-time staff. The pay was terrible, barely covering our monthly expenses, but I showed up early and stayed late. I learned to listen more than I talked, to observe how these small operations worked, how money moved, where the opportunities hid. Nobody knew about my past with Colin. To them, I was just another contractor trying to make ends meet. That anonymity was liberating in a way I hadn't expected. I helped a dry cleaner reorganize his books, saving him $3,000 in taxes. I showed a restaurant owner how to restructure his payroll. Each small success felt like building a foundation brick by brick. One client, a property manager named Vincent Shaw, pulled me aside after I'd found a major billing error that would have cost him tens of thousands. "You saved my business," he said, shaking my hand. "I owe you." 3 weeks later, Vincent called with an offer. He bought a foreclosed duplex as an investment and needed someone trustworthy to help manage the renovation and resale. "I'll give you 20% of the profit," he said. "If you're interested." I was interested. This was the seed I'd been waiting for. The duplex was a disaster, rotting boards and broken pipes, but I saw potential. I spent every weekend there, learning about property values, market cycles, renovation costs. Vincent taught me about loan leverage, how to use other people's money to build wealth, how to read a neighborhood's future by studying development patterns. I absorbed everything like a man dying of thirst. The numbers that had once been used to destroy me, those spreadsheets and financial projections Colin had twisted into weapons, suddenly became tools I could use to build something real. At night, I studied tax codes and real estate law, teaching myself what I should have learned years ago. Mara noticed a change in me. "You seem different," she said one evening. "More focused." I was focused. For the first time since the firing, I had direction. We sold the duplex 6 months later for $32,000 in profit. My 20% came to just over $6,000. It wasn't much, most people would call it pocket change, but to me it was oxygen. Proof that I could do this, that I wasn't the failure Colin had painted me as. I took that check to the bank and opened a new account under a business name I've been thinking about, Eastview Investments. Nobody knew Eastview was mine. The LLC paperwork listed me as managing member, but the name was neutral, forgettable, exactly what I wanted. I reinvested that first profit into another property, then another. Small deals, careful moves, nothing flashy. I learned to negotiate with banks, to spot undervalued properties before they hit the market, to calculate risk with the precision of someone who'd lost everything once and refused to let it happen again. Mara went back to teaching during the day, and slowly, painfully, we began to breathe again. We weren't comfortable, but we weren't drowning. Lily got her braces. We bought a used car. Small victories that felt enormous after the darkness. I thought about Colin every day, but not with the white-hot rage that had consumed me in those first months. Now it was colder, more patient. I'd learned something crucial. Revenge that burns hot fades quickly and often backfires. But revenge that builds slowly, disguised as legitimate success, that kind of revenge was unstoppable. Each property I acquired, each deal I closed, was another step up a ladder Colin didn't even know existed. I wasn't chasing him. I was building something that would eventually make our paths cross again on my terms. 3 years after the firing, I saw Colin's face in a business magazine. The article was titled, "Rising Stars, Local Entrepreneurs Making Waves." He'd left the company where he destroyed me and started his own consulting firm. The photo showed him standing in front of a modern glass building, arms crossed, that same smug smile I remembered. Colin Mercer, founder of Mercer & Associates, has built his reputation on turning around struggling businesses, the article said. I read every word twice, studying the details. His new office was in a commercial plaza on the north side of town. The firm specialized in corporate restructuring and financial consulting. 23 employees. Revenue in the high six figures. He was quoted saying, "Success comes from knowing when to cut dead weight and focus on what matters." The phrase dead weight made my hands clench. But instead of tearing up the magazine, I carefully cut out the article and taped it into my notebook, right below the page where I'd written his name years ago. "Perfect," I said aloud in my empty office. "Keep climbing, Colin. Get comfortable up there." Because the higher he climbed, the further he had to fall. And I was learning patience from men who'd built empires. My time would come. Tom Breen was 71 when I met him at a property auction. He outbid me on a warehouse I'd wanted, then bought me coffee afterward. "You bid smart," he said, stirring sugar into his cup. "Knew when to fold." That's rare in young guys. Tom had made his fortune in commercial real estate over 4 decades. He'd survived 3 recessions, 2 divorces, and more bad deals than he cared to count. Over the next year, he became something between a mentor and a father figure. Never tell them it's personal, Tom taught me one afternoon while reviewing a property deal. Business is business, even when it's revenge. Especially when it's revenge. He showed me how to structure shell companies, how to buy properties through intermediaries, how to make moves that left no fingerprints. "You want to know the real power?" he asked once, his weathered hands spread on the table. "It's not owning things. It's making people live under your shadow without them knowing you cast it." I thought about Colin every time Tom said things like that. 4 years had passed since the firing. Eastview Investments now owned 11 properties. Small portfolio, but growing. And I was learning to think in decades, not days. Patience wasn't just a virtue. It was a weapon. The opportunity came on a Thursday morning. I was reviewing potential acquisitions when I saw a commercial plaza, coming up for sale. The owner was retiring, looking for a quick cash deal. The property wasn't spectacular, just a 2-story building with retail on the ground floor and offices above. But something made me look closer at the tenant list. Suite 204, second floor. Mercer and Associates. Collins firm. My heart rate spiked, but I forced myself to stay calm. I called Tom immediately. "There's a property," I said carefully. "Personal interest?" "Very." "Then walk away," he advised. "Personal clouds judgment. What if I can separate them?" Silence on the line, then Tom's dry laugh. "Then you're ready. But Dean, once you start down this road, there's no going back." "You sure?" I looked at the tenant list again. Colin Mercer's name in black and white. 5 years of patient building had led to this moment. I'm sure. The plaza was overpriced, but I didn't care. I structured the deal through 3 shell companies. Layers of paperwork that would take forensic accounting to trace back to me. 2 months later, the sale closed. I now own the mortgage on the building where Colin Mercer ran his consulting empire. He had no idea his landlord had changed. He had no idea I was back in his life, invisible and patient, holding all the cards. I didn't rush. That was the key Tom had taught me. Owning the building meant nothing if I couldn't use it strategically. So for the first year, I did nothing except watch. Colin's firm paid rent on time through automated transfers. The property management company handled day-to-day issues. I studied his business from a distance, learning his patterns. His firm had grown to 32 employees. They'd taken on several high-profile clients. Colin was making money, living well, probably never thinking about the man he destroyed half a decade ago. But small cracks were appearing. I noticed them in the financial reports my property manager sent monthly. Rent came a few days later each quarter. Nothing alarming, just slight delays that suggested tighter cash flow. Tom and I reviewed the reports over lunch one day. "Financial consulting is a tough business," he observed. "Requires constant new clients to maintain revenue. One bad quarter, and everything gets tight." I studied the numbers, feeling that cold patience that had become my default setting. Colin's firm was successful, but not stable. They were top-heavy, too many high salaries, not enough diversification. Vulnerable. "The lease comes up for renewal in 8 months," I said. Tom smiled, that knowing expression of a man who'd played this game before. "Then you've got 8 months to prepare." "Patience, Dean. Let him get comfortable first." 7 months later, Colin's assistant sent a panicked email to Eastview Investments' general inbox. The subject line read, "Urgent, Suite 204 lease renewal." The message explained that Mercer and Associates wanted to renew their lease, but requested a 30-day extension on the formal paperwork, due to unexpected client delays affecting cash flow. In other words, they were having money problems. I read the email 3 times before responding. My first instinct was to squeeze immediately, to raise the rent or deny the extension. But Tom's voice echoed in my head. Patience. I drafted a professional response. Extension granted until Friday. Please note that our standard renewal terms require first and last month's rent at signing. Looking forward to continuing our professional relationship. Polite, businesslike, with just enough pressure to make them uncomfortable. Friday came and went. No payment. Saturday morning, Colin's assistant sent another email, more desperate this time. Mr. Mercer requests a meeting to discuss payment terms. I stared at those words for a long time. After 5 years of patience, of building and waiting and preparing, Colin Mercer was finally asking me for something. He just didn't know who he was asking. Meeting approved. I wrote back. Tuesday, 2 p.m., Building Management Office. I signed it with Eastview's automated signature. The trap was closing. He still didn't see it coming. I arrived at the property management office 20 minutes early, wearing a suit I'd bought specifically for this moment. Nothing flashy, just professional enough to project quiet authority. The property manager, a woman named Patricia who'd worked with me for 2 years, raised her eyebrows when I told her I'd be sitting in on the meeting. "You never come to tenant meetings," she said. "This one's special." Colin arrived exactly at 2, dressed in an expensive suit that probably cost more than my first car. He walked with that same confident stride I remembered, like he owned every room he entered. He didn't recognize me at first. 5 years had changed us both. I'd lost the extra weight, gained some gray in my hair, learned to carry myself differently. And he never really looked at me anyway, not closely. I was background noise to men like Colin. Patricia handled the initial pleasantries, offering water and small talk that Colin barely acknowledged. He was impatient, annoyed at having to justify himself to building management. About the lease, he started, his tone suggesting this should be quick. We need some flexibility on terms. Define flexibility, I said quietly from my corner chair. Colin's eyes flicked to me, barely interested. And you are. I stood up slowly, walked to the table, and sat directly across from him. I'm the owner. The words hung in the air. I watched his face carefully, waiting for recognition. It took 5 seconds. His eyes widened. His confident posture crumbled. Dean, he whispered. I smiled, cold and patient. Hello, Colin. I hear you've had some trouble keeping your books clean lately. I paused. Funny. That's exactly what you said about me. Colin tried to recover, but his voice had lost its certainty. This is unethical. You can't use your position as landlord to settle personal grudges. I leaned back, calm as winter. I'm not settling anything. I'm simply managing my property according to standard lease terms. You sign a contract. Fulfill it. Patricia looked between us, clearly sensing the history, but staying professional. Colin's hands were shaking slightly. Dean, listen. What happened back then, that was business. Nothing personal. The laugh that came out of me surprised even me. Nothing personal. You destroyed my career, Colin. You fabricated evidence, spread lies, and watched me lose everything while you got promoted. And now you want me to believe it was just business. He stood up, trying to reclaim authority. I could fight this. Lawsuit for harassment, conflict of interest. You could try, I agreed. But right now, you owe me $14,000 in back rent, plus late fees. You violated your lease terms. And according to the contract you signed, I can begin eviction proceedings with 30 days' notice. The color drained from his face. You wouldn't. I pulled out a folder I prepared, sliding it across the table. Your lease expires in 2 weeks. These are the new terms for renewal. Triple the security deposit, 20% rent increase, and all payments due 15 days in advance instead of 30. It was excessive, deliberately so. Colin stared at the numbers, his jaw working. This is revenge. No, I said quietly. This is business. Nothing personal. Colin didn't sign that day. He stormed out of the office, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Patricia waited until his footsteps faded before turning to me. That was intense, she said carefully. You know him. I used to. Over the next 2 weeks, Colin tried everything. He had his lawyer send threatening letters about unlawful eviction and targeted harassment. I had my lawyer, someone Tom had recommended, send backcom responses citing contract law and standard business practices. Everything I was doing was legal, if aggressive. Colin tried calling me directly. I didn't answer. He tried reaching out through mutual contacts from our old firm. I ignored them. Finally, 3 days before the lease expired, his assistant called requesting an emergency meeting. This time, I agreed to meet at Mercer & Associates' office. Walking into Colin's space felt surreal. The office was modern and expensive, all glass and chrome, trying too hard to project success. Employees worked quietly at their desks, but I could feel the tension in the air. They knew something was wrong. Colin met me in his conference room, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked defeated. What do you want? He asked. I want you to understand what you did. I said simply. I want you to feel what I felt. He sat heavily in his chair. I can't pay what you're asking. My firm is struggling. If you force me out, 30 people lose their jobs. I thought about that. About Lily watching our car get repossessed. About Mara working nights. Maybe you should have been more careful with your business model, I said, echoing his word from years ago. Maybe you're just not fit for leadership. The eviction notice was delivered the following Monday. Legal, formal, unavoidable. Mercer & Associates had 30 days to vacate Suite 204. I watched from my car as the process server handed the envelope to Colin's receptionist. Through the second-floor windows, I could see Colin in his office, his posture sagging as he read the document. It should have felt triumphant, but mostly I just felt tired. Tom called that afternoon. Building going up for foreclosure next week, he said without preamble. You planning to buy? Yes. Expensive. You'll need partners or serious leverage. I've been saving, I said, and I'll do whatever it takes. The foreclosure auction happened on a gray Wednesday morning. 6 bidders showed up, including one large development company that I'd worried about. But I'd done my homework, secured financing, and knew exactly how high I could go. The bidding was tense. When it ended, I paid more than I wanted but less than I feared. The building was mine. Completely, officially mine. Every brick, every window, every office where Colin had built his kingdom. I stood in the empty lobby after signing the final papers, looking around at what I'd accomplished. 5 years of patience, of sacrifice, of cold determination. I pulled out my phone and texted Colin. "You have 2 weeks." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. We both knew it was over. The question was whether he'd go quietly or make this harder than it needed to be. Colin chose neither. Instead, he disappeared. For 3 days, his office sat empty while his confused employees showed up for work, not knowing what to do. His assistant kept calling my office, increasingly desperate, asking for extensions or meetings or any path forward. On the 4th day, I drove to the building myself. I found Colin in his office late at night, the only light coming from his desk lamp. He was packing boxes, moving slowly like every item weighed 1,000 pounds. He looked up when I entered, and I was shocked by how much he'd aged in 2 weeks. "You came to gloat?" he asked, his voice hollow. I shook my head, pulling up a chair. "No, I came to make sure you understood." "Understood what?" "That you won." "Message received, Dean. You destroyed me just like I destroyed you. Congratulations." I sat in silence for a moment, choosing my words carefully. "That's not why I did this." "Then why?" Colin asked, genuine confusion in his eyes. "Because you needed to know what it feels like. To build something and have it taken away. To be powerless. To watch your life collapse while someone else smiles." I leaned forward. "You didn't just fire me, Colin. You humiliated me publicly, spread lies, and made sure I couldn't find work. You enjoyed it." Colin's shoulders slumped. "I know. I've known for years." "Then why did you do it?" He was quiet for a long time. "Because I was afraid," he finally admitted. "You were good, Dean. Really good. Better than me at the numbers. I saw you as a threat." The confession hung between us. All these years, all this pain, because of fear and ego. "The locks change tomorrow," I said, standing up. "But I'm not heartless. You have 2 weeks to clear out completely. After that, this building belongs to my vision, not yours." The next morning, I stood on the building's rooftop watching the sun rise over the city. It was the same roof where Colin used to hold client meetings, bragging about his success and his growing empire. Now it was mine, every inch of it. The city hummed below, traffic building, another day beginning. Mara had asked me the night before if I felt satisfied, if destroying Colin's business had been worth the 5 years of obsession. I told her I'd have to think about it. But standing there, watching lights spread across buildings and streets, I realized the satisfaction wasn't in Colin's failure. It was in my own success. I'd rebuilt myself from nothing. I'd learned new skills, built a legitimate business, acquired properties through hard work and smart planning. Colin's downfall was just a side effect of my own rise. My phone buzzed. Tom, checking in like he did every morning. "You on the roof?" "How did you know?" "Because that's where I went after my first major victory. Needed to see the world from above." Yeah, I admitted. "It looks different from up here." "Different how?" I thought about that. Smaller. Colin seemed so powerful 5 years ago. Untouchable. But from up here, everyone's just trying to survive. "That's wisdom," Tom said. "The question is what you do with it." I knew what he meant. I could become Colin, using power to destroy anyone who threatened me. Or I could be something better. 6 months later, the building had new tenants. I'd renovated the second floor, dividing the large office space into smaller units perfect for startups and small businesses. A graphic design firm, a tech consulting company, a nonprofit that helped unemployed professionals retrain for new careers. That last one was personal. I sat on their board and donated renovation costs so they could offer their services for free. Lily came to the building's reopening, now 13 and full of questions about business and money. "Dad, why did you buy this place?" she asked, looking around at the ribbon-cutting ceremony. "It's complicated," I said. "But basically, someone hurt me here once. So I made sure it became a place that helps people instead." She thought about that. "Like revenge, but nice." I laughed. "Something like that." Mara squeezed my hand as we watched the new tenant celebrate. We were stable now, genuinely stable. The business supported us comfortably. Lily had a college fund. We'd even bought a house with a yard. Not huge, but ours, paid for with money I'd earned through patient work and smart decisions. I thought about Colin sometimes. I'd heard he'd moved to another state, taken a job with a firm there, started over. Part of me hoped he'd learned something. Part of me didn't care. The version of me that had been destroyed 5 years ago was gone. In his place was someone stronger, wiser, more careful about trust, but also more grateful for what he'd built. Tom died the following spring, quietly in his sleep, exactly how he would have wanted. At his funeral, I met other men he'd mentored over the years. Entrepreneurs and investors, people who'd learned from his wisdom about patience and strategy. We shared stories about his lessons, his terrible coffee, his habit of asking one question that would unravel your whole plan. Afterward, Tom's daughter gave me a box. "Dad wanted you to have this," she said. Inside were notebooks, decades of them, filled with Tom's handwriting. Property deals, lessons learned, strategies that had worked and failed. On the last page of the final notebook, he'd written a note dated 2 months before his death. "Dean, by now you probably won your war. The question is whether winning made you better or bitter. Choose better. The world has enough bitter men. Build things that last. Help people who are where you were. That's the real victory. Your friend, Tom." I carried those words with me. Started looking for people to mentor, contractors and small business owners who needed guidance. Gave advice freely, invested in promising ventures, tried to be the kind of person Tom had been for me. And sometimes late at night in my office, I'd take out that old notebook from 6 years ago, the one where I'd written Colin's name with so much rage. I'd read that last line. "One day, Colin Mercer will answer to me." He had answered, but more importantly, I had answered to myself. Years became a blur of steady growth. Eastview Investments expanded beyond properties into consulting and mentorship. I hired people, good people, and treated them well. Paid fairly, promoted on merit, never played the games Colin had played. Lily graduated high school with honors, got into a great college with scholarships that meant she wouldn't graduate drowning in debt like I had. Mara started a small business of her own, and I had the privilege of helping her build it without controlling it. One afternoon, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line made me pause. Apology long overdue. It was from Colin. The message was brief. He'd rebuilt his career, was doing well, had learned humility the hard way. He didn't ask for forgiveness or try to excuse what he'd done. He just acknowledged it, admitted he'd been wrong, and hoped I'd found peace. I stared at that email for a long time before responding. "I appreciate you saying this. I hope you found peace too." That was all. We weren't friends. We'd never be friends. But the rage that had driven me for so many years was gone, replaced by something quieter. Understanding, maybe, or just the exhaustion that comes from carrying grudges too long. The building still stood, still thrived. But it wasn't a monument to revenge anymore. It was just a good investment that helped small businesses succeed. Exactly what it should have been from the start. I stood on that rooftop one last time before selling the building years later. The city had changed, grown, become something different. So had I. The man who'd been publicly humiliated in a conference room was gone, replaced by someone who understood that revenge wasn't about destruction. It was about rising so high that the person who hurt you had to look up just to see where they went wrong. Mara joined me, slipping her hand into mine. "Thinking about Colin?" she asked. "Thinking about the lesson," I said. "About how the worst thing that ever happened to me turned into the best thing. Because it forced me to rebuild from scratch, to become someone I never would have been otherwise." She leaned against me. "Would you do it all again?" Knowing how hard it would be. I thought about that question seriously. The humiliation, the poverty, the years of patient planning, the cold determination it took to climb back. "Yes," I finally said. Because the climb taught me things comfort never could. About patience, strategy, resilience. About becoming the kind of person who builds instead of destroys. We left the roof together, took the elevator down, walked out into the afternoon sun. Behind us, the building stood solid and profitable, filled with people building their own dreams. Not a trophy of revenge, just proof that dignity matters more than dominance, that character outlasts cruelty, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to become the person who hurt you. I locked the door one final time, under my roof at last, and walked away from the war I'd already won.